This is Dave, and I'm here with Ethan, and together we are Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, episode 238-inch.
On this episode, we recap our trip to California and share all of the Weird Al-related fun that went down, including our star-studded private screening of Weird Al Yankovic Story and our panel at San Diego Comic-Con.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
It's a podcast about Weird Al.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
Seriously, the whole podcast is about Weird Al.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
You don't have to listen, but we're glad you are.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
Well, a big hello to you, Ethan.
Well, hello there, Dave. I hope you had a happy 50th birthday.
Thank you, but you already know I did. You were there.
That's true. I was literally there for the moment you turned 50 years old. To be precise, the exact minute it happened. And we listened to Happy Birthday in every different version we could possibly find, recorded by Weird Al Yankovic. Anyway, we'll fill our wonderful listeners in on your birthday and all the other fun we had in California in just a little bit. But first, your first present, Dave, it's time for What's Happening in Weird Al-related news!
Ooh, this is my favorite present so far. Okay, you've probably heard by now, but on Friday, July 19th, Weird Al dropped his brand new single, Polka Mania, a polka medley of a dozen of the biggest pop hits of the last 10 years since Weird Al released Mandatory Fun.
Now, the following songs are included in the medley. The Helena Polka, Al's version, Bad Guy by Billie Eilish, Hello by Adele, Flowers by Miley Cyrus, We Don't Talk About Bruno, written by Lin-Manuel Miranda and performed by the cast of Encanto, Vampire by Olivia Rodrigo, Old Town Road by Lil Nas X, Despacito by Louis Fonsi featuring Daddy Yankee, Shape of You by Ed Sheeran, Uptown Funk by Mark Ronson featuring Bruno Mars, WAP by Cardi B featuring Megan Thee Stallion, Thank You Next by Ariana Grande, Shake It Off by Taylor Swift, and of course, the Ear Booker Polka by Weird Al Yankovic.
Along with John Bermuda Schwartz, Steve J, and the Grammy Award-winning Jim Kimo West, past guest of the podcast, Wayne Bergeron, appears playing trumpets for the song, and longtime Weird Al collaborator Tress MacNeille appears voicing the Next Lady.
If you haven't bought your copy yet, you can get the single Polka Mania on iTunes, Amazon Music, or anywhere else digital music is sold or streamed.
Also on July 19th, an animated music video premiered featuring animations by a number of excellent animators, new and old to Weird Al projects.
Returning animators and studios include Augenblick Studios, Acme Filmworks, Liam Lynch, Jack D. Evans, Ghostbot Incorporated, Kuko Mitsu, Victor Yared and Melanie Mandel, Jarrett Heather, and Bill Plimpton.
And while Ryan Kurzak has never worked on an official Weird Al video prior to Polkamania, many consider his fan video for Albuquerque to be canon in the Weird Al music video verse.
Also featured is Vivian Medrano, known as the creator of the hit show Has Been Hotel, and animator Syriac, who has worked for Adult Swim and with Bob and David.
The Augenblick Studios segment for Hello by Adele was worked on by past guest and friend of the podcast, Josh Pilch. Also, David DeGrand worked on the same segment, and while he hasn't been on the podcast yet, he is the illustrator from past guest Rob Kuttner's book, Snot Goblins.
Now, the reception for Polkamania has been incredible, and it has done quite well on YouTube, peaking at number 5 on YouTube Music Trending. And as of this recording, it's well on its way to hitting 5 million views.
Weird Al has also been sharing links to many news outlets who've covered the release, including Rolling Stone, Forbes, and even Sports Illustrated.
Now, while we encourage you to read all of the interviews in their entirety, there are some highlights that we wanted to mention, including how Weird Al wanted to include a verse of Kill Bill by SZA, but received no response from her, so he couldn't include it.
Weird Al also said he considered the song Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter, but the song was left out because it had not hit number 1, which was Al's criteria for including songs in the medley.
Weird Al also hinted that he's working on some more music-related projects, and there may be some more singles in the future. And maybe even a Broadway musical?
Plus, the next tour, whenever that may be, will be, quote, another big one.
Yay!
Hip hip hooray!
Now, if you recall, we asked our listeners to text their guesses to the 347 Spatula hotline for what Weird Al's new song would be ahead of its official release.
Well, after serious consideration and reviewing all the guesses over and over again, we have chosen Isaiah Ferguson as the winner with his guess of a polka medley.
Our runner-ups tied in second place were Tom Walker and Kaylin Bruce, who both guessed that it would be a polka medley containing entirely Taylor Swift songs.
Ooh, so close. If they had said it was a polka medley that contained a Taylor Swift song, as opposed to only Taylor Swift songs, they could have won.
Isaiah, please reach out to intern Frank with your t-shirt size and mailing address, and we'll be sure to get your free t-shirt on the way.
And to everyone else who submitted guesses, they were really fun to read, and we desperately hope that some of your guesses come true for Weird Al's next single.
YouTube star Whitney Avalon recently shared a video where Weird Al joins her as she unboxes her first gold record.
You can check out the video on her YouTube channel, youtube.com/Whitney Avalon.
From all of us here at Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, congratulations to Whitney Avalon on her RIAA gold certification.
And speaking of videos, Puddle's Pity Party recently shared a video in which Weird Al makes a special appearance performing Accordion Boogie.
Previously, this was part of a paid Puddle's Pity Party video, but now you can check out the video on the Puddle's Pity Party social media or wherever else you watch Puddle's Pity Party videos.
Well, that's easy for you to say. Well, remember when Weird Al sang the Ice Cream Truck song at San Francisco Sketchfest? Well, Mo Willems just released the video of Al performing it, complete with lyrics, on his YouTube channel.
33 1/3 Books has announced that Weird Al Yankovic in 3D will be getting the 33 1/3 treatment with a book written by Justin Reamer, expected to be released in 2026.
Also, the Book of Bill by Alex Hirsch, set in the universe of Gravity Falls, has been released and features a quote on the back cover from none other than Weird Al.
Legendary cartoonist Drew Friedman's brand new book, Shtick Figures, is now available and features his portrait of Weird Al from the Illustrated Al, both in the book and on the back cover.
It has been announced that Weird Al will be appearing for all 3 days of GalaxyCon San Jose in California from August 16th through August 18th.
And Weird Al, once again, has appeared on the Get It to Dutch podcast, reprising his character of attorney Al Bingo.
This episode is brought to you in part by vegan burrito restaurant Burrito Burrito, home of the 2-pound wrapped in a quesadilla Burrito Burrito and Wizard Burger in Albany, New York. Come on down to Burrito Burrito and Burrito Burrito, your Burrito Burrito, and Wizard Burger for mouth-watering, loaded, dare I say beefy, vegan burgers. From Albany to Uranus, Burrito Burrito and Wizard Burger feed the hungry with out-of-this-world, plant-based, real food, always vegan style. Visit burritosquared.com and wizardburger.com to order ahead.
And now it's time for What's Happening in Grammy Award-winning Jim Kimo West related news. The Grammy Award-winning Jim Kimo West has been regularly releasing singles with Josh Jaffe and has also recently released the album Kimo Vito with David Vito Grigoli.
In his latest email newsletter, Kimo mentioned that he attended an event in Hollywood hosted by Ethan Allman and Dave Rossi, who created the Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, for which he composed the theme song. Now wait a minute! I don't remember hosting an event in Hollywood. Do you have any idea what Kimo's talking about, Ethan?
Oh, I'll tell you all about it later, Dave.
Well, okay. Well, anyway, Kimo goes on to say that at the event, the coolest thing was him meeting actor Jack Lancaster, who played the 80s version of him in Weird Al Yankovic Story. Whoa, how exciting!
From all of us here at Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, thank you for the shout-out in your newsletter, Chemo, and we're glad you had fun at our special event.
Special event? What are you talking about?
I'll tell you later, Dave. But right now, it's time for What's Happening in Z2 Comics, communicating with buyers of the Weird Al branded mini accordion-related news.
After episode 237-inch of Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast dropped, as promised, Z2 Comics CEO Josh Bernstein sent an email to buyers of the Super Deluxe edition of the Illustrated Al to apologize for the lack of communicating and promising a timeline to come soon.
And then a second email was sent later that week claiming buyers can expect the accordions to arrive by November of this year, 2024.
Now, Ethan and I both received our emails regarding the accordions, but we did hear from some listeners who did not receive their emails despite them purchasing the Super Deluxe set. If that is the case with you, we recommend emailing Z2 Comics customer service ASAP.
We also heard from a few people that did receive the email despite not buying the Super Deluxe edition. We don't know what that's all about, but at least they're emailing someone though, right?
Of course, we are now intertwined with the story of Z2 Comics and accordions, so we will keep you updated as the situation progresses.
Now it's time for What's Happening in Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast related news.
While we have been traveling, our intern Frank has been hard at work editing and posting content over at patreon.com/2000inch.
Secret episodes featuring interviews from the Ethan Basement Tapes with John Linnell and John Flansburgh from They Might Be Giants have been posted, along with the long-awaited secret episode number 27, which is just an absolute blast and something that we've been working on for over 5 years.
Now would be the best time ever to join our Patreon family, starting at the Internet Leaks level. If you're interested in supporting our podcast financially and getting some fun stuff in return, head on over to patreon.com/2000inch to sign up.
Okay, Dave, now we have to talk about everything that's happened since you've been gone.
Don't you mean since we've been gone?
Well, yes, but technically you were gone too.
All right, well, I think first of all we should talk about what we were supposed to do.
All right, we were supposed to head to Austin, Texas to see Weird Al and some friends at a Comic-Con appearance. Then we were supposed to head to Los Angeles for a private party we're throwing. And then we were supposed to head to San Diego for our panel debut at San Diego Comic-Con. But that wasn't quite exactly what ended up happening. We'll explain.
All right, so Weird Al was doing an appearance at a comic convention that we were very excited to attend and see Weird Al and all of our Weird Al friends and listeners while we were in Austin, Texas.
On the morning of our flights to Austin, a company called CrowdStrike pushed through a Microsoft update that led to a global shutdown of banks, other industries, and most importantly for us, air travel across the United States.
Now, we will spare you some of the really painful details, but the issue created a domino effect that resulted in neither of us being able to make it to Austin in time for Weird Al's appearance.
So we would love to thank our friend Jackson Scoggins, who we were very much looking forward to spending time with in Austin, as they were able to redeem our VIP tickets and collect all of the exclusive Weird Al related merchandise for us on our behalf.
What this also meant was Jackson got to use the autograph vouchers and the photo op vouchers that Ethan, Jackie, and I had purchased.
Now, what Jackson did with these extra vouchers still has us cracking up. Now, you may have seen the custom Dave and Ethan Funko Pops we recently created. When we ordered sets for ourselves, we also ordered an extra set to give to Jackson as a gift for their many years of friendship and all of their support of the podcast.
Jackson had planned to have Ethan and I sign the Pops while we were in Austin, but instead, Jackson asked Weird Al to sign the Pops.
Yes, but not the normal Weird Al signature. Jackson asked Weird Al to forge Dave and my autographs on the Pops.
All right, you got to see this because Jackson posted a photo of the pops in our Facebook group over at group.2000inch.com, and it is seriously one of the funniest things we have ever seen.
Jackson now has the single most in-joke item in existence of listeners of Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, and we truly applaud them and Weird Al for making this happen.
Now, Jackson continuously gave us reports of what we were missing and what we weren't missing throughout the weekend, and we can't thank them enough for all their help getting us the exclusives for our collection.
I also want to point out, Weird Al did a pretty good job forging our signatures.
Yeah, if I hadn't known, I could have thought that was your actual authentic signature.
So once our Austin, Texas options had completely dried up, the next target was making it to Los Angeles in time for the Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast private party that we were throwing.
Now, working along with Jeff Nucera, Adriana Yankovic, and Scott Sorensen, we planned a super fun party to celebrate the podcast and Weird Al while we were out in Los Angeles.
Now, with our desire to do a screening of Weird Al Yankovic Story, but also our super modest budget, we landed on a super cool but also super small theater in Hollywood for the party.
And since it was a really small venue, we had to keep a really small guest list and could only invite a select group of past guests and podcast supporters.
Now, once the options to get to Austin fell through, the only way for me to make it to Los Angeles in time was to rent a car and drive to an airport 3.5 hours away. So I did.
And once the options for Austin dried out for me, the only way for me to make it to Los Angeles in time was for my flight to not get canceled. And it did. So unfortunately, I had to miss my own party.
Dave, we were super bummed to not have you and Jackie there with us. But I have to say, even without you, the party was an incredible amount of fun. So let's talk about what happened. And Dave, you were part of the planning, so you know what happened, and I've told you. So join me in sharing some of the festivities.
I will live vicariously through you. Now, I remember when we were planning, one thing we really were concerned about was making sure we had enough snacks and drinks for people. So did that go smoothly?
Oh, we had so many snacks, Dave. We had, of course, Twinkies and chips and beer and Coke Zero and soft drinks. There was really something for everyone. And in fact, we bought so much stuff that at the end of the night, I told people they weren't allowed to leave until they filled their bags and pockets and arms with all the remaining snacks.
Well, I'm glad that part went smoothly. All right. I also remembered we had a lot of fun screenings and videos planned.
Yes. So for the first part of the night where people were coming in and mingling, we just had a mix of Weird Al music videos and miscellaneous other Weird Al funny videos. And we even showed the then brand new Polka Mania music video.
Very nice. And even though I know I couldn't be there, I did record a video and I did send it to you and Jeff. So was that able to be played?
Yes, we played the nice video you sent us, Dave, from your Weird Al museum in your house. And everyone was really bummed that you weren't there, Dave.
Aww. Yeah, I was really bummed that I did not get to see everyone also.
Now, this was really cool, and I know you've seen it before, Dave, but there's an unreleased animated short featuring Weird Al that was created by our friend Craig Billmeyer, a.k.a. Hot Licks Houlihan, called That Sucks, and it's only screened in a handful of film festivals at this point, and we got permission to show it in its entirety at our party, so the guests got to see That Sucks.
Amazing. Now, I know one thing we wanted to make sure we played was the original Funny or Die Weird trailer, so I'm sure that was played at some point.
Absolutely, we played that, and then I did a fake out before we actually went to the feature presentation of Weird Al Yankovic Story. I played the Tough Bikers trailer, which people can see on our Instagram profile, that was created by our very own Claire Walsh, and everyone got a huge kick out of that.
And of course, the main feature we had planned was Weird Al Yankovic Story, starring our very own Ethan Ullman and our very own myself. as well as like Daniel Radcliffe and a couple of other people.
Well, there were a few people from the film actually there, but I do want to just say before we get into some of the guests that it was such an incredible experience watching this film in a really small space with these really big fans and people who worked on the film.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm sure they've seen the film before, obviously, and they've probably seen it together before, but it's not very often you get that many people reunited from a movie in the same room, get to watch it over again.
Totally. And, you know, separate from when it was released. I mean, it's been a couple years at this point, and it was just so fun. People were, you know, shouting out lines. Of course, everyone cheered when we came on the screen, Dave, you know, the stars
Yay!
of the evening. And now this is really cool. Musical Mike Kiefer from the Dr. Demento show, and he's also known for being the incredible hand fart musician that Weird Al has used over the years. Not only was he at the party, he also curated a music playlist that we played after the film for final mingling, and it was just so great. Really fun old jazz songs that he had dug up from his collection.
Absolutely amazing. All right, so we know Mike Kiefer was there, and I'm pretty sure UH Jeff was there, and Adriana was there, and Scotto was there. Who else was at the party?
Dave, obviously you and Jackie were not there, unfortunately. Right? We would have loved to have you there. But here, I'll kind of put together a couple little chunks of people. So let me say that we had a ton of past guests from the podcast at the party.
Now, we're celebrating 5 years of Dave and Ethan's 2000 Years Weird Al podcast, so it was really important when we were putting together the guest list to invite as many past guests of Dave and Ethan's 2000 Years Weird Al podcast that reasonably could have made it.
Yes, now very, very luckily, the great Crazy Ken, a.k.a. Kenneth Gwinnett, was there. It was really cool to see him. David Grant, a.k.a... I don't even remember all the different
Sebastian
names.
Shepard.
Sebastian Shepard. MC Chalkskin. He was there. He came up to see us. We had Summer Woods there. Vicky DeVries rhymes with cheese. The great Dr. Demento. Sam Levine. Two of the three Al's gals, Scotty Haskell and Monique Donnelly. Very recent guest, Allie Gertz was there. Weird Al's hairstylist Sean James. Of course, the Grammy Award-winning Jim Kimo West. J.M. Kehoe, the property master from Weird Al Yankovic Story. Eric Appel, the director and co-writer and voice of Captain Buffoon from Weird Al Yankovic Story was there. David Bloom, Teenage Al was there, and of course, the award-winning editor of the film, Jamie Kennedy, was also there. So a really cool mix of past guests were able to attend.
Incredible. And I know we had some future guests there as well. Chris Chapin and Sulu and some people from Showgals, Eddie Schmidt and Jonathan Ruane. Incredible list we had.
Yeah, so while you haven't heard them on the podcast yet, you probably will fairly soon. And also, I guess kind of a past guest, Matt Kelly was there from the Weird Algorithm podcast, along with Matt Milligan. And I know that we're already talking about doing crossovers with them, and we'll talk about the panel we did with them later. Now, also from Weird Al Yankovic Story, who has not yet been on our podcast, was who we mentioned earlier, Jack Lancaster, who played Jim West in the film.
Okay, so now Chemo's newsletter makes sense.
That's right. Now, somehow, Jack and Jim had never actually met each other. Tommy had met Bermuda, and Spencer had met Steve, but they had never gotten the opportunity to meet. So it was really cool. I was actually there when they met, and we got a picture together, the three of us, and my friend Gabe took the picture, and I have no idea if the picture came out because he doesn't know how to use his camera. So maybe that moment in history was captured, but I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. So there were a couple other friends and supporters and plus ones and other really fun people who were able to show up. It was so cool, Dave. You would have had a blast. It was just a really fun energy throughout the whole night of people just chatting and celebrating Weird Al and the podcast, and it was so much fun.
Yes, you're making me very sad that I missed it. But you know what I did see? I did see that Sean James posted a reel on his Instagram documenting the time at the party.
Yeah, that was really cool. Sean took a lot of really cool pictures and videos from the event. He even styled Isaiah's My Bologna Weird Al Puppets hair, which
Oh, I love it.
I don't know if you can imagine how cool that was for Isaiah to have that happen.
Absolutely.
Now, that was a really fun surprise, and there was also a couple gifts exchanged, Dave. So I think you know about these, but of course, Scotty Haskell, a.k.a. Scotty Mitchell, she brought us each physical copies of her brand new album, Stories to Tell, for our collection. So thank you to Scotty for those. And Dave, J.M. Kehoe also brought us a few pieces of the actual stump that has a watermelon smashed on it in Weird the Al Yankovic Story.
I love those. Those are amazing. And the fact that JM just even kept that is incredible.
Now, JM also brought you something pretty special, Dave.
Yeah, he, through you, I did get it. Thank you, JM. The actual skull ring that I was wearing in the biker scene in the biker bar. So thank you so much. That was incredibly kind of you, JM, and it's an amazing piece for my collection.
I'm so jealous. I don't have any Screen News props from Biker number 7 in my personal collection. I feel like you have all the good props, Dave, from that character.
Well, I do think you have something pretty cool that's screen used that Eric brought for you.
That's true. That's true. It was not from Tough Biker number 7 or Tough Biker number 8, but it is a pretty iconic prop in the film. And it actually is a prop that was talked about on our podcast about how difficult it was to get. And that is one of the actual screen used Devo hats from the pool party scene.
I love it.
I was so blown away, and I was so nervous about getting that hat home with me. I have a little story to tell at the end of this segment about how I actually managed to get it home in one piece. So a huge thank you to Scotty and Eric and JM and everyone else who made that party just so incredible and so much fun. And of course to UH Jeff and Adriana and Scotto and everyone else who helped.
So it wasn't until Tuesday morning that Jackie and I finally arrived in Los Angeles, a few hours too late for the party, but we did make it to Los Angeles, finally.
I was very excited to finally see you guys. We got back to the Airbnb, you guys settled in, and then we went out for lunch and some really fun Weird Al related adventures in Los Angeles.
Yeah, our Airbnb was fairly close to Hollywood, so we took a drive over to Hollywood Boulevard, and no, our first stop was not Weird Al's Star, but it was the Funko store on Hollywood Boulevard, which is a fun place. We've been there before, but Jackie's never been there, but you and I have been there before, and it is a ton of fun. We do highly recommend people go check that out if they're on Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah, and we kind of just went there just so Jackie could see it, and we wanted to check out Amoeba Records, which is pretty much across the street. But we're walking around the Funko store, and I'm sure people have heard us talk about the first time we got Funko Pops created at that store. We made John Bermuda Schwartz, and then we got in trouble and all that stuff. Well, we were just kind of playing around looking at the machines, and we saw that they had brand new boxes for the custom figures, and the boxes had Hollywood stars on the side of them.
Yeah, they totally changed their setup since we were last there. Everything is now pretty much computerized, and you can pretty much customize your figure and look at it before you actually order it, which was pretty cool. And yeah, we did. We ended up getting our very own Ethan Ullman and our very own Dave Elvis Rossi Funko figures, solo, not together, for our collections.
Now we just need Weird Al to sign them with our names.
I think I want to have Jackson sign one.
That's a great idea. Now, when we were at the Funko store, it just so happened to be Daniel Radcliffe's actual birthday, and they just so happened to have a giant Harry Potter Funko Pop. So Dave and I, of course, had to take a picture with our co-star as a tribute for his birthday.
So after our fun at Funko, we headed pretty much across the street to Amoeba Records, and we were checking out to see if they had any Weird Al related stuff in the store.
So they had a handful of Weird Al 45s, and they were so cheap. So I just was like, I'm just going to buy these. I think it was like 5 or 6 of them for less than $20. So I had to do it.
So while you were looking through the 45s, looking for Weird Al and Weird Al related vinyl, I was checking out the CDs and the LPs, and I ran across a few Al CDs, but I was really surprised to see the latest Napoleon 14 album, For God's Sake, Stop the Feces by Needle Juice Records, where Weird Al wrote the liner notes.
Plus, they also had a few copies of Weird Al Yankovic Story, but really nothing that we didn't already have, Dave. But it was still cool to dig around. They always have some interesting stuff there.
So after we had our fill of Amoeba records, we headed across the street to a CVS to pick up cleaning supplies because our next stop was going to be Weird Al's Star on Hollywood Boulevard.
Well, we got to Weird Al's Star, and it was filthy.
Disgusting. It was gross.
We sprayed all sorts of chemicals on it, and we scrubbed it on our hands and knees for 3 whole days, or minutes. I don't know. We scrubbed it pretty clean, and we're standing there admiring it. And of course, as we're cleaning it, people are walking by and gawking at us because I didn't see anyone else scrubbing any stars while we were there. And this guy comes up to us, and he's like, "Weird Al Yankovic." And I turned to the guy, and I'm like, "Oh, it's Yankovic." And where did he say he was from? Do you remember?
I don't remember the country, but it was one of the Eastern European countries, and he was very adamant that it was pronounced Yankovic.
And I said, I don't care how you pronounce it. This guy's actual name is pronounced Yankovic. And I did get in a bit of a shouting match with the guy.
Well, he insisted it was Yankovic, even after we told him, no, Weird Al himself says it's Yankovic. And he said, no, it's Yankovic in my country. And we're like, well, we're not in your country right now. We're in Hollywood, and it's Yankovic. But I don't think he ever got the message.
Well, who are you going to trust? Some random guy, foreigner walking by, or 3 people on their hands and knees scrubbing a name on the sidewalk? Who do you think knows how to pronounce it? Anyway, that was a lot of fun, and it's always a blast to get to see the star and get to shine it up. And I mean, even compared to other stars that are more recent than that one, I think enough people are cleaning it that it really it looks beautiful still.
Yeah, it's amazing. Once we cleaned it up, it looked amazing. It looked brand new. It looked better than it did when it was brand new.
Now, we got back to our Airbnb, and I was blown away because there was a food truck in this little complex where we were staying, and it was called La Lasagna. And so I go up to the owner, who is a very Italian guy with a very thick Italian accent, and I'm just like, "Hey, do you know Weird Al?" And he just looks at me and he goes, "La lasagna." It was so great. I ended up actually eating dinner there, and it was excellent.
Yeah, I'm kind of bummed I didn't get a chance to try the La Lasagna from the food truck. But Jackie and I did have dinner plans with a friend of ours, so we had to pass on the La Lasagna and went elsewhere.
Now, the next day was your actual birthday, Dave. Happy birthday. Your 50th
Yay!
birthday.
Happy birthday to me.
Half a century, Dave. I can't believe it.
I know.
So that was also our travel day, though, where even though it was only your second day in Los Angeles, it was already time for us to leave and head down to San Diego. But not before we stopped at this really fantastic restaurant in Hollywood called Hugo's, and we had a really nice birthday lunch.
Yes, both the restaurant and my lunch choice of Tres Tacos were recommended by some close personal friends, so I want to thank them for those great recommendations. We had an amazing time at Hugo's.
So then we hopped on the road and we drove for 3 whole days and nights down to San Diego Comic-Con, and we got into our Airbnb, and then we went to the Comic-Con, and we met Matt Kelly from the Weird Al-Gorithm podcast, and we got our passes for the week.
Yeah, so this was Wednesday, and Wednesday there was sort of a preview. Not everybody was allowed in, but our passes did grant us access to the convention floor, so we sort of walked around and took everything in. And Ethan, I know you've never been to San Diego Comic-Con before. I've never been to San Diego Comic-Con before. Jackie's never been to San Diego Comic-Con before. And we were kind of briefed a little bit from Matt and others who've been there about exactly how big this is, but they didn't do it justice. This place was huge. It was incredible. I've never seen anything like it.
It's not something that we can really even convey on a podcast that's audio only.
No.
It's just, if you're interested in San Diego Comic-Con, I would just Google San Diego Comic-Con videos, watch some on YouTube, and just get a little piece of how crowded and huge and insane this place is. And we'll talk about some of the things we've done, but I don't think we even saw half of it. To be honest, because there's all these other things that are outside that are kind of part of it and tied in. And I mean, we were there for a couple days, and I don't know how anyone could see all of it.
Yeah, it's impossible to see everything, but we did try to take in as much as we could. And on that Wednesday, there was a couple of Weird Al related things that we came across.
Yeah, so I was really excited to head over to the Shout Factory booth because I heard a rumor that they would be selling some of the exclusive enamel pins from their top tier UHF package, and those hadn't shipped out yet. So it was really exciting to be able to get my hands on those sets early.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. They did have, obviously, the Weird Al related DVDs and Blu-rays that they sell on their website, many of them in stock, as well as the enamel pins, which was really pretty cool, and some posters as well. And I was excited to go to Shout Factory just so I could shout the word factory at them.
And I want to sort of kind of preface the San Diego weekend with, if you're going with someone else, walking together is nearly impossible. So there are a couple times, Dave, where you and I were together and traversing, this thing. But for most of the time, we just all split up because there's just so much to do, and it's really hard to keep track of people.
Right. Yeah, we all had our own agendas. I know Jackie's very much into cosplay, so she was running around in the cosplay areas and checking out cosplay panels. And you and I have, we share our interest in Weird Al, but we also have other interests, so we did split up quite a bit over the weekend for different panels and other fun activities.
Yeah, so there were a few other things that I was able to hit on Wednesday that was sort of my, I absolutely gotta go to these places. And it was nice because it wasn't super busy on Wednesday. And I was able to head over to this really great artist who I know we've purchased from before. And his name is Joey Spiotto, and he had a brand new Weird Al print and then stickers of Weird Al from that print. So that was a special request from Kenneth Gwinnett that he wanted some stickers. Actually, he asked for 27 stickers, and they were $5 each, so I did not get Kenneth 27 of them. But I did make sure to get at least one for each of us, Dave, you, me, and Kenneth.
Okay. I'm pretty sure Kenneth would have settled for 26 and a half stickers.
And also just kind of bopping around, I was able to run into a couple books that featured Weird Al, of course, at the Z2 Comics booth, who you've heard a lot about on our podcast. They were selling the Illustrated Al. They had the limited edition, the box set version, and then they also had the comic book store version, as well as individual packs of those trading cards for sale. And yep. I was able to see the Ninja Sex Party Origins graphic novel available for sale. And Johnny O'Hearn actually recently told me that Weird Al is mentioned in that book, of course, written by past guests of our podcast, Ninja Sex Party. And then the book that we mentioned in the Weird Al related news, Gravity Falls' Book of Bill, with Weird Al's quote on the back. I also happened to see that on Wednesday when I was walking around. So a lot of Weird Al related stuff.
All right, so Thursday was the big day. That was our panel at the Neil Morgan Auditorium at the San Diego Central Library. The panel name, Weird Algorithm Podcast Celebrate Al's TV Album.
So what was kind of surprising is we showed up to this library where this auditorium was, where we were going to have the panel, and it was actually not super close to the convention center. It was at least like a 15-minute walk to get there, which was surprising to me that they would have an event that far away. But it was a really nice auditorium.
Yeah, the auditorium itself was very nicely laid out. Great stage up front and a lot of comfortable seats. And I think, they had some very interesting panels going on there. Again, the location wasn't the greatest, but we did have a nice turnout for the panel.
Yeah, and that was sort of where podcasts were relegated. So
right.
There was a podcast panel on just before us where they were talking about, I think it was called So You Want to Have a Podcast, and
right.
we checked out some of that. We were just sort of like taking in everything and just kind of mentally preparing ourselves for this panel. And I think we kind of talked about the subject of the panel, but maybe we can briefly talk about that and who is on the panel before we get into the panel itself.
So I don't know if we've ever actually read the description, but basically this is what the panel was advertised as. Matthew Kelly and Matthew Milligan of the Weird Algorithm podcast are joined by Dave Elvis Rossi and Ethan Ullman, Jackie Rossi, Jeff Nucera, and Joey Slater to discuss the history of Weird Al Yankovic's love of television by drafting a list of the best songs he ever recorded about TV.
So what that essentially translates to is over the course of the panel, we would be creating our own top 5 list of Weird Al TV related songs. Not just the ones from the TV album, but from the entire scope of Weird Al's songwriting career.
Right, and the Matthews kind of gave us some guidance as to what they would have accepted as TV songs, but we did have a secret weapon. We had Johnny O'Hearn from the Weird Al Encompassing Song List to help us out, and Johnny put together this really impressive list of over 200 songs that are somehow TV related. So we did run that past Matthew before the panel started, and they said, hey, we're up for it. Let's see what happens, but we're going to be the final judges on the matter, and we may veto some of these songs if they don't quite meet our criteria.
Now, there will be an opportunity for people to hear the entire panel, and also our friend Jeff McClelland was able to video record it for us, so I'm sure those will be available at some point. So we don't want to give every single spoiler because we do want you to check out and enjoy the panel. But what I'll just say is, oh my God, Dave, it was such a blast. I mean, it was so much fun arguing with you guys and fighting over the various TV songs.
Yeah, no, actually the panel I thought was wonderful. I thought we all did an amazing job. I thought our lists were really well thought out and very well researched. There were a few times I think you and Jeff and maybe even Jackie sniped some of my choices. But it was all in fun. And at the end, I think we ended up all having really good lists. So I think overall, it was a great panel, and I think when it eventually does get released on the Weird Algorithm podcast and elsewhere, it's definitely worth checking out.
Oh, absolutely. And it was really cool. So Joey Slater, she is Matt Milligan's wife, but she's also a member of the band Wheatus, and they had a really funny thing prepared at the beginning of the panel. And then after that, it went into the actual draft. And Matt were sort of the referees of the draft. And it was me, it was Dave, it was Jackie, and it was Jeff who actually created the list in that order from 1 to 4.
Yeah, a lot of fun, and definitely so glad we did it. And I'm so happy with how it came out. And I hope we get to continue doing more of these.
Absolutely.
In the future.
And how great was it to finally get to meet the guys from the Weird Algorithm podcast? We got along so well with them. They're such fun guys, and we're already talking about doing more crossovers on their podcast and our podcast. So this is definitely the beginning of a really fun partnership with those guys.
Absolutely. Definitely looking forward to seeing what we can come up together for the next adventure.
Yes. And of course, we had a very special past guest of the podcast in attendance at the panel, and that was Vicky DeVries, rhymes with cheese.
Absolutely. And Jeff McClelland rhymes with McClelland.
Yes. Well, I mentioned him already as being there to record, but yes, he also is a very special past guest of the podcast. And we also had Patreon supporter Jonathan Shockley there, who is a really funny comedian and friend of ours, and a number of other people who came just because they're Weird Al fans and didn't even necessarily know our podcast or the Weird Algorithm podcast.
And what's really cool about this was because the location wasn't quite, right next to or right in the actual convention center itself, people had to purposely travel to come to this thing. So everybody who came out was there because they wanted to be there, not because, they were just finding a place to sit down or waiting for the next panel. So it was pretty exciting, to know that our audience was filled with people who wanted to be there and wanted to hear what we had to say.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of touched on it, Dave, but there were other panels that we attended throughout the weekend where people were obviously there because they wanted to be there early for the next panel that was starting after it. Or people were just there because they needed a spot to sit down to eat lunch. Right. And, when our panel ended, everyone got up and left. They were there for the panel, and I know everyone was rushing off because it was day one of Comic-Con and they had other panels and other things to get to, but it was really cool to get to see such great, passionate Weird Al fans come out for the event.
And because we were one of the first panels on, all of the pressure of, having to do something at San Diego Comic-Con was over pretty much on the first day. So we got to enjoy the rest of the time, without any sort of commitments. So that was a lot of fun as well. At that point, we were just guests, and it was so much fun.
Except I did have one commitment later that day that I had to get through, and I'll talk about that in a second. But after the panel, we had a really nice lunch with friends, including UH Jeff's sister and Vicky DeVries' daughter. And it was just such a great experience getting to hang out with everybody and have a nice lunch.
Yep, and after lunch, we actually headed back to the convention center, and you and I pretty much split up. Jackie went off and did her cosplay thing, so she was off. I was hanging out with Vicky DeVries, Rhymes with Cheese, and Jordan DeVries, Rhymes with Cheese, and we went to a wrestling-related panel, so I don't know where you went off to.
Yeah, I went back to the Shout Factory booth at one point, just to see if I missed anything Weird Al related. And so this Shout Factory booth just happened to be right next to this giant SpongeBob SquarePants. I wouldn't even call it a booth because it's much more than that. But I guess the SpongeBob SquarePants activation, I guess maybe is what you call it. And at the same time as our panel, in one of the other panel rooms was the SpongeBob 25-year anniversary panel. And I guess I happened to be there right when that panel let out, so they had all of the stars of SpongeBob actually at the activation booth.
Oh, nice.
I didn't get to talk to everyone, but I was super thrilled that I was able to say hi and get a picture with past guest of the podcast and voice actor for Plankton, Mr. Lawrence. It was so cool finally meeting him.
Very nice.
And Dave, I got to also meet one of my other favorite voices from the show, and it was Roger Bumpus, who plays Squidward, who I relate to so much more as an adult than I did as a kid. So it was pretty great getting to see them. And I didn't get to meet the voice of Mr. Krabs or the voice of Sandy, but I did see them, and they seemed really friendly.
Cool. And there actually was another panel that I went to later in the evening called The Art of Movie Posters.
Oh.
Yeah, there's actually a really interesting panel. It was about, the visual history of movie posters, and, get to see all the design and prep that goes into them. But I was actually surprised and not expecting to see the movie poster for Weird Al Yankovic Story show up in one of the slideshows.
Whoa! Which of the posters was it?
So it was the poster, the one with the explosions going on in the background. Now, I found out that the art of that poster was done by Paul Shipper, the same person who did the art for Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, Avengers Infinity War, and You Can Call Me Bill, the documentary about William Shatner.
I love all of those things, Dave.
I knew you would.
Actually, I've never seen The Rise of Skywalker, but I'm sure it's great.
Well, the artwork for it is incredible, and it's the same artist that did Weird Al Yankovic Story. So that was very exciting to see that and learn all that information about Paul Shipper.
What are the odds that you show up to a random panel and it's Weird Al related? That's so
I know,
great.
right? I was not expecting that.
Now, I ended up leaving a little bit early this first day because I made a commitment with my friend Jeremy. Now, Jeremy's been on the podcast before. He's a very big Weird Al fan. He's one of the producers of Gutenberg the Musical, the musical where Weird Al made his Broadway debut. And he produces an event all about the classic cartoon that only lasted one season, Mission Hill. And so he was doing a screening with the two creators, and I helped him out and sold merchandise during the show. And what was really cool is not only did I run into a listener of ours who I've never met before, Matt Dunford, I also got to chat with Brian Posehn, who of course knows Weird Al and has done stuff with Weird Al, and of course is from Mr. Show. So that was really cool, getting to work that event and see Jeremy and help him out. And unfortunately miss out on the cool poster thing, but it was fun. It was fun.
So, of course, we had 3 more full days at San Diego Comic-Con, and we could probably spend hours talking about them. So we're just going to try to touch on real quickly all the Weird Al-related highlights that we had on the last 3 days.
So just like on Thursday, I again ran into some pretty cool random people. And the first one I ran into was Vera Drew. She's the creator and star of The People's Joker. And Dave, if you recall, she also was one of the editors for the Comedy Bang Bang season that Weird Al was on. So very cool.
Oh, nice.
She's a huge Weird Al fan, and it was great just randomly running into her.
Very cool. I spent most of the day on Friday hanging out with UH Jeff and his friend Riley, and we were just kind of walking around the convention floor. Jeff had a few places he wanted to go to. I brought him over to meet Joey Spioto. You know, we've previously mentioned him with the Weird Al prints and stickers. And also, as we were heading to meet Vicky DeVries, Rhymes with Cheese, we're walking past this one booth, and I see a poster with Cheese Sandwich from, you know, the My Little Pony universe over there. And I stopped and I flagged down Jeff, and I'm like, Jeff, stop walking. And I ran over, and the artist was Tom Zahler. And he wasn't actually there at that time because he was in a panel or doing a signing or something. But I said, I'm going to buy your cheese sandwich posters from you, from the person manning the booth. And he said, oh, come back later and Tom will sign them for you. So that was pretty cool. That was a random sighting of a Weird Al character cheese sandwich on a poster. And I'm pretty happy with him.
Yeah. And so then later on in the day, you and I met up, and we got to actually chat with Tom, and he signed the posters for us. And he said he wrote a lot of the stories for the My Little Pony comic books that sort of fell in between, I guess, you know, plot lines in the show. So it was really cool to get to meet him. And he said, hey, there's an artist here who drew on the My Little Pony comics. You should go ask her if she has any cheese sandwich art. So we did that the next day. And I guess let's just jump ahead to the next day. On Saturday, we went and we met Agnes Garbowska, and I was flipping through some of the original comic art she had, and there were a handful of, you know, kind of, you know, you could tell it was cheese sandwich, but it wasn't really like a full shot of them. And then I came across one where it is cheese sandwich playing an accordion on a page, and I just had to buy it. It was way too cool.
Yeah, that was a really cool piece of artwork. Definitely a great rendition of Cheese Sandwich playing the accordion. Very nice to add that to your collection.
Yeah. And so then, Dave, you and I actually got to go to a couple panels together. I mean, you missed part of it, but I went to this Toys That Made Us panel because my friend Brian Volk-Weiss, he runs the Nacelle company, and they produce that show. And at the end, you and I got to say hi to him and grab a picture with him. And why do I bring this up, Dave? He produced the Alpocalypse Live special for Weird Al.
Very cool. Yeah, it was nice to meet Brian. And yeah, I ended up missing most of the panel because that SpongeBob thing that you were talking about earlier, I was in line for that pretty much for over an hour trying to have the SpongeBob 25th anniversary experience. So I'm a little bummed I missed part of that panel, but experience was fun.
And I think something important for people to know is, like, 75% of San Diego Comic-Con is waiting in line for something. That is pretty much what you're doing most of the time. Now, Dave, we got to go to a really cool panel. I'm surprised we got in. It was for Family Guy.
Yeah, speaking of long lines, we were expecting a really long line for Family Guy. I know there was a bunch. There was like Simpsons and American Dad and Family Guy, all like back to back to back in the same conference room. So we really weren't expecting to get in, and they made us walk like a mile and a half through this to get there. But we actually did get in the Family Guy panel, and that was a lot of fun. And they didn't really talk about Weird Al or anything in the panel, but the panel did feature Seth Green and Gary Cole, who both have Weird Al connections.
Yeah, so that was really cool. And we also got a couple commissions done. The first one was we got scanned in 3D.
That's right. They had this booth that would take a 3D picture of you, and then eventually they made it into an animation, and then you could go and you could buy like the prints, and if somebody had a 3D printer, they could print us out in 3D. But yeah, we ended up getting scanned for that, and we did this great pose of us, in our, famous, hand signals, and I was really happy how it came out.
And finally, yeah, Dave, we reveal what is happening behind us, behind our special poses. So we'll eventually post that little, they did like a little GIF of our 360. So I'm sure we'll post that eventually. But we also went over to see Tom Richmond. He is a famous Mad Magazine artist, and yes, he had contributed to the Weird Al issue of Mad Magazine. And I asked him, like, do you have the original Weird Al drawing that you did? And he said, no, I gave it to Weird Al. So, I'm okay with not owning something as long as Weird Al has it. But Tom is super talented and super nice, and we actually commissioned him to do a drawing for us for a sticker. So I'm really excited to see what that eventually looks like. We haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, as you can imagine, the artists there, they get a lot of requests for commissions. So they basically, take all the orders, and then they go and they draw them on their own time when they get out of the convention settings. So that'll be coming to us hopefully in a few weeks.
Yeah, it'll be cool. So I think our next Weird Al related thing at San Diego Comic-Con didn't come until Sunday, the final day of the convention. And I should mention, Dave, for the party and for San Diego Comic-Con, we actually printed up a bunch of new stickers to start handing out to people. And of course, in our bag of goodies, we have We Hate Intern Frank stickers. Those are some of the most popular stickers we've ever had.
Absolutely, yeah. And so we're walking together, just kind of, taking in everything San Diego Comic-Con, and we see this artist that has something with the word Frank related on their artwork.
And Dave, you were wearing your I Hate Intern Frank shirt.
I was. I was wearing my I Hate Intern Frank shirt. We had the I Hate Intern Frank stickers. The name Frank, is synonymous with this podcast. So we had to go over and talk to this artist. His name was Phil Yeh, Y-E-H. And he was there with his wife, Linda. And we started, just talking about, how Frank, fits into our whole lore, and how he was telling us how Frank fits into his lore. And then somehow the subject of Weird Al came up, and Phil says, "Oh, I did a magazine with Al many years ago."
Incredibly, this guy had done I guess he had a series of magazines or zines where he put out comics and did interviews with people, and Weird Al appears in one of them. And he didn't have any of that issue on hand, but he gave us his email, and he said that he has some at home. So I'm really excited to add those to the collection, Dave.
Yes, absolutely. We'll have to have our intern Frank reach out to his Frank and get that all set up.
Now, I went to a semi-Weird Al related panel. I went to see Yo Gabba Gabba. And part of it was because I wanted to see the panel after it, but part of it was because, of course, Weird Al is in Yo Gabba Gabba, and this panel was moderated by Patton Oswalt. Of course.
Oh, yes, of
many
course.
Weird Al connections there. And then
Our co-star, Patton Oswalt.
that is very true. Fellow tough biker, Patton Oswalt. And, one of the creators of Yo Gabba Gabba is Scott Schultz, who is from the band Aquabats. So there's a lot of crossovers with Weird Al. And I went into that panel not really expecting much. Like I said, I went there so I could be early for the next panel. And it was so much fun because all of the Yo Gabba Gabba guys in costume came out and they were dancing and answering questions.
Nice.
And it was so fun.
Very cool. Now, I didn't actually go to any Weird Al related panels. I think there's something about pop-up artwork, and there was another wrestling panel I ended up going to. But no Weird Al related stuff came up in either one of those, unfortunately. And the very last thing we did on San Diego Comic-Con was Weird Al related. So Vicky DeVries, Rhymes with Cheese's son, Jack DeVries, had a booth at San Diego Comic-Con. We went over and said hello to him. I actually said hello to him earlier in the week, but you joined me to say hello to Jack. And Jack, believe it or not, actually is an extra in the White and Nerdy music video.
Pretty stinking majestic. And quite literally, after the two of us together said hi to Jack, we got kicked out because it was the end of Comic-Con. But overall, even though it wasn't a super Weird Al filled convention, it was a ton of fun. There was a lot of course, comic book and movie stuff and all sorts of things and lines and giveaways. And it was just really fun, Dave. I don't think I would have ever gone to San Diego Comic-Con on my own because, first of all, I wouldn't know how to get tickets. But also, I mean, there's so much. It's such a bigger than life kind of event. And the fact that we got to do a panel there and that we got to go and experience this like pop culture mecca was it was unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. It was absolutely amazing. It was far exceeded my expectations. I had so much fun there. I would do it again in a heartbeat. We're so thankful to Matthew Kelly and Matthew Milligan of the Weird Al-Gorithm podcast for inviting us, for thinking of us, for their panel, and for helping us get to San Diego Comic-Con, and for, just being amazing people the entire week. I know they had a panel set up for their Geekscape, and I constantly went over there, whenever I had a free moment just to say hello. So it was always great to see. I got to see them a lot over the weekend as well.
Yeah, their Geekscape booth was really cool. They had a lot of fun stuff going on, and they were super generous in showing our flyers and handing out our stickers. And I love those guys. So much fun. And Dave, I did tease earlier that I had to get my Devo hat, the screen-worn Devo hat home. So let me tell you how I did this. I wore it.
Wait, so you wore your Devo hat in the airport and on the airplane?
I didn't want to pack it in my backpack or my bag because I was afraid of it breaking. So, yes, I didn't wear it 100% of the time. I did, carry a bag, and then once I got on the airplane, after a little bit, I put it in the bag, but it was, it was kind of ridiculous. I got a lot of strange looks, which I don't care. People can give me weird looks, whatever. But the craziest thing was, as I'm boarding my second flight home, the airline employee sees my hat, and he's like, "That is awesome, man." He's like, "Is that from, the original band, or because of Weird Al's version?" And that blew me away. I don't know if I would have ever expected a random person who doesn't know that I, am a Weird Al super fan and run a Weird Al podcast and I'm in the Weird Al movie. I wouldn't expect them to go to Weird Al when they see a Devo hat, but he did. And I was like, incredibly, you're right. This has nothing. He didn't even know the name Devo. He just said the original band. I'm like, yeah, this is Weird Al related. And I told him the story of how I got it, and he was freaking out. He's like, "Oh my God, that's so cool." And he was telling all of his coworkers, he's like, "You got to watch Weird Al Yankovic Story. You got to see the movie."
I love it.
It was so cool.
Very cool. So the hat made it home safely, is what you're
The
saying.
hat made it home safely, absolutely.
And you're wearing it right now.
I'm never taking it off again.
Excellent.
And you know what else, Dave? This episode is brought to you in part by Discover Darwin, promoting tourism in Darwin, Minnesota. Not only is historic Darwin, Minnesota beautiful, it's also almost Twine Ball Day.
Every year, on the second Saturday in August, the entire town of Darwin, Minnesota comes together to celebrate Twine Ball Day.
And as it happens to be, this coming Saturday, August 10th, is the second Saturday in August!
Yay, that means it's Twine Ball Day! The event features a Twine K race,
Sand volleyball tournament,
Grand Day Parade,
food vendors,
Min-E rods,
craft fair,
live music,
kids pedal pole,
beanbag tournament,
and Twine Ball Museum.
Now, while the Grand Parade is free entry, some events require a registration fee, so please check ahead.
For example, registration for sand volleyball is $60 per team, and registration for the beanbag tournament is $50.
And this is very important. You must bring your own bean bags to the beanbag tournament.
Actually, that's what we think. It just says BYO bags, so that's probably what it means.
Hey, you know what? They take beanbag toss very seriously in Darwin, Minnesota. What can I say?
And while it's not specifically stated, we also recommend bringing your own sand for the sand volleyball tournament. Better be prepared and safe than sorry.
So visit Darwin, Minnesota on your next second Saturday in August expedition. Discover Darwin more than just a twine ball. And after you visit Darwin, Minnesota, be sure to attempt to visit www.discoverdarwin.biz.
Dave, there's way too many phone calls on the 347 Spatula hotline. I'm getting really hot in this Devo hat. Can we just do these on a future episode?
I think that's a great idea. Thank you all for the amazing 347 Spatula phone calls. We will get to them in a future episode.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast is brought to you absolutely free thanks to our incredible sponsors, Burrito, Wizard Burger, our very own Jackson Scoggins, and Discover Darwin. Our podcast is also supported by everyone else in our Patreon family, with special thanks to our very own close personal friend level Patreon supporters. Zach Casper, Javier, Kev Messick, Adriana Banana Yugovic, Scotto Brothers, Kenneth, Ajax, Weird Stream Date Nancy, Matt, Dana B. and Beaker, UH Jeff, Gus and Alicia, Ron, Zeb, Casey Killingsworth, Allison, Blair, and our newest close personal friend level supporter, Devlin. Also thanks to Jeff McClelland, Aaron 3D Henry, Ron, Jeremy Samples, JM, and everyone else in our pretty stinking majestic Patreon family.
If you enjoy our now official San Diego Comic-Con Weird Al podcast, as heard in the Weird Al Yankovic Story commentary track, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/2000inch. There are awesome benefits like getting your name on the podcast, your own private RSS feed, which gives you early access to each and every single bonus episode, and the self-satisfaction of doing something important with your otherwise pitiful, meaningless existence.
And don't forget to check out our official merchandise over at shop.2000inch.com. All proceeds from purchases go directly towards supporting our fine podcast. We love hearing from our listeners and other Weird Al fans, so be sure to join our Facebook community at group.2000inch.com and visit our Discord server for even more riveting Weird Al and Red Rum Goody related conversations. You can find both of them linked on our website, as well as information about past episodes and guests over at 2000inch.com or weirdalpodcast.com.
Keep up on new episodes, podcast news, and events by following at 2000inch on Facebook, X, Threads, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe everywhere you listen to podcasts so you do not miss a single episode. Not only does subscribing help our podcast, your podcast will be featured on a panel at the next San Diego Comic-Con. Plus, we also love it when we get voicemail on our 347 Spatula hotline, the official hotline of Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, as seen in the Illustrated Al, the songs of Weird Al Yankovic. That number is 347-772-8852. Give it a call or a text, and you might even hear your message in a future episode.
Dave and I wish to thank Matthew Kelly and Matthew Milligan from the Weird Algorithm podcast. We also wish to thank special guests Jackie Rossi, UH Jeff Nucera, Adriana Yugovich, Scotto Brothers, Joey Slater, Johnny O'Hearn, Kenneth Gwinnett, Jeff McClelland, Vicky DeVries rhymes with cheese, Jordan DeVries rhymes with cheese, our very own Jackson Scoggins, our very own Claire Walsh, Josh Pilch, Chris the Weird Al admiring cartoon-loving geek from Canada, Jim Kima West, Gabe Lucci, musical Mike Kiefer, Isaac, John Ennis, Isaiah Ferguson, our very own Dave Elvis Rossi's parents for giving birth to him just over 50 years ago, and everyone who stopped by to watch our panel at San Diego Comic-Con. Thank you to the Grammy Award-winning Jim Kima West for our incredible podcast theme song, and thank you to Weird Al Yankovic, as this podcast probably would not exist without him. And a big thanks to all of you, our loyal listeners, subscribers, Patreon supporters, and sponsors, and everyone else who makes our podcast possible.
Thank you for choosing Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast. And until next time, remember to gill and chill, keep listening to Weird Al, and stay cheesy. All right, Ethan, I've got to ask, what was your favorite panel at San Diego Comic-Con?
Geez, that's a hard question. Probably the Hanna-Barbera, the recorded history panel with those old guys who rambled on about the music of Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera.
Really? Really? More than our panel? The panel that we ourselves were on?
Well, yeah. I didn't get to take a nap during our panel, unfortunately.
That was Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, episode 238-inch.
Approved by 2 out of 2 hosts of this podcast. La lasagna.
Next.